All right, brother.
For authors, filmmakers, entertainment, and all your listening needs, listen now to Talk Now Radio, where no topic is taboo.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Talk Now Radio. This is your host, Royce the Redneck Radio Man. And joining me tonight is going to be Zen Garcia. And we're going to be discussing his latest book, The Sons of God. And before we get started discussing this, and before I introduce Zen, who's been on my show in the past, and we've always conducted a fantastic show together, in my opinion. But before we get to all of that, I wanted to let everybody know, or remind everybody that I'm no longer Paranormal Palace Radio. I have switched my name to Talk Now Radio, and I've started doing variety instead of just paranormal. I have not, gotten away from paranormal, and I have not gotten away from works of spirit or works of religion or anything else. I have simply added to it, and I'm including sports, news, entertainment. I mean, whatever you can think of, I decided to just offer me a big, broader base of knowledge that I can learn from as I go. And also the call-in number would be 832-632-7904. If you guys are listening somewhere other than at Talk Now Radio, I invite y'all to get a free membership to my site at www.talknowradio.com, and that will let you into the chat room. And you can also sign up for a free newsletter while you're at it. And we'd love to have more people in chat to discuss these shows when we have them, in fact. Now, if you want to learn more about Zen, you can find out more about him at www.fallenangelstv. And he's got a social network of his own over there, complete with groups, forums, blogs, photo gallery, video gallery, music gallery. He has all kinds of information about his work that he's been researching over there, places to discuss his work and learn more, and a place to contact him over there. Everything you could possibly want. I really recommend you go over there and join up. In fact, I'm a member over there, and he's even been gracious enough to allow me one of his groups over there to post my shows in, because he needs some of his members who just might want to know what I had going on. So, Zen, how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing great, brother, and it's an honor to be here with you, Royce, and just want you to know that we're all praying for you, brother.
Oh, well, thank you. I really do appreciate that. And while you're mentioning that, for the y'all that don't know about it yet, I've been diagnosed with emphysema and brachionitis and MAC, and my lungs are pretty much in pretty terrible condition. So if I do cough during a show, just overlook it. I do try to mute it, but I'm not always successful at getting to the mute button in time, especially when I'm talking and it hits me suddenly. So just overlook that should it happen, and hopefully it won't happen. Also, if you folks are listening and all of a sudden there's no sound, it's possible that I had a power failure because it's raining over here. If that happens, me and Zen will reschedule this. Don't worry about that. If it doesn't happen, we're going to continue on with the show. Just wanted to know so nobody be surprised. Zen, you want to tell us a little something real quick about what got you interested? Your book is really not that far off topic from Lucifer, the father of Cain, but it is a branch off. What motivated you to kind of, do this supplement, you might call it?
Well, people were interested, and a lot of my listeners and the readers, they wanted to know about pre-existence and predestination, and about our first estate, how we were involved in what had transpired before our incarnations here in the flesh. Because what most people don't realize is that we did have prior lives, spiritual lives. And when I speak about spiritual life and a prior life, I'm not necessarily talking about incarnating multiple times over a lifetime and various different embodiments, but I'm speaking about how we pre-existed before our flesh, and that we had a spiritual aspect of ourselves that is connected to the Father and the Son, the Most High, and that part of us is what occupies our flesh. It's that aspect of us that goes on to dreaming at night, every night when we leave our flesh bodies, and it's also that aspect of us that can have part in salvation and be part of the elect and the righteous, and to return to our first estate.
Well, there is then, if you don't mind me mentioning it, because I'm with you on the same page of what you're talking about right there, but there was one area that I thought about when I was reading the book that I'm not sure if you and me agree on or not, and we don't have to agree on everything, and you know that. We've always been able to agree to disagree. That's not a problem.
Right.
But what I'm curious about is where you stand on this here particular issue. I myself feel like if you're looking for a one-on-one relationship with God, or looking to get closer to God, looking for atonement, that you're not going to find that in any one particular given religion. That if you want a one-on-one relationship with the Father, you have to go inside your own soul, your own self, your own being in prayer and meditation.
Absolutely.
In fact, I think many religions are false.
Yeah, well, a lot of them were brought up by the fallen angels. That's the paganism. A lot of pagan religions were spawned by the fallen angels. That's why they worship a pantheon of multiple gods, and a lot of times those particular religions are involved in victim sacrifice, cannibalism, the drinking of blood, things that are considered abominations by the true creator of us all. And I would agree with you that real knowledge of self and knowledge of the creator comes from introspection and personal seeking. A divine relationship with the Father and the Son is something that stands apart from religion. Even though going through certain religions, you can certainly learn certain things that would allow you to have such experience, but personal relationship comes from seeking, and that is something that is introspection from within, going out into nature by yourself, doing prayer, and it's a desire, an earnest yearning to know the Father and the Son, to know the secrets of the universe, to come to know the higher aspects for our life and being that leads one into truth and revelation. And all of that comes from the Creator, not from a book or a religion or a building or another pastor or minister. It comes from seeking through self-introspection.
And I would agree with you 100% on that. And I really wanted to bring that up. Like I say, I was reading your book, and one of the things that you were mentioning in that book is how these fallen angels were the father of many religions and the roles that they played. And I found it was important to cover this particular area because of the fact that, well, with the fallen angels' interference in early man's religion, it made for a big umbrella of deception in today's age that really makes it hard for anybody to come close to God unless they understand that they have to take an initiative themselves, in other words.
Absolutely. And that was part of their purpose. Another aspect of the paganism and the idolatry that the fallen ones was established was the Matrix. And, you know, everybody's watched those movies, and we understand that as being the whole American dream, the 9 to 5, everybody go to school for 18 years of your life and then get a job so you can make enough money to, you know, live within the system and to support the system. And then when you're 65 years old and worn out and tired enough, you can finally retire to enjoy life. And most people buy into that belief system and support it 100% without ever thinking outside of the box, so to speak, into in seeking out something other than what we've been taught. And so most people adhere to that and believe it their whole lives, but there's a spiritual part of life and being that can fulfill us greater than, the carnal aspects of the physical world, because a lot of that is an illusion. And so many people buy into the American dream, but find that when they go into it and they learn that it isn't necessarily the thing that brings happiness. And so that's a hard lesson to learn. And then a lot of times people are so led astray by the world and by life that they never, ever get to a point where they start to seek anything greater than, the things that they've been taught.
Well, I think I've also seen in a lot of people's end that they seek happiness in the outside world. And in all honesty, there is no real happiness in the outside world, much less any of any permanent, lasting value. If a person, at least to my way of thinking, after 54 years on this planet or in this reality, is if you're going to be happy, you have to be happy with what you got and in the circumstances you have to deal with, because you ain't going to have nothing else to be happy with.
Mm-hmm.
It's within yourself you find the happiness, not with what's going on externally. Now, I think once we pass on out of this reality into the heavenly reality, that could be a different story. But, with the first Adam, he brought into this here through temptation where we're at now, so we had to cope with what we got now until that day.
Right. And that's all, all of us are incarnating into the flesh now is our test, our trial, to redo, because I also speak about this in my book, how it was some of the things that we did during our first embodiment, our spiritual lives, because we were part of the divine council, the sons of God. We pre-existed with the Father and the Son, and we were with the angels. And the war in heaven was the deciding factor that caused the separation of light and darkness. And that also was when Lucifer, as the first archangel cherub, he led 1/3 of the angels in rebellion. And so a lot of us here in the flesh now were part of those that didn't side one way or the other within the war. Some here are of the elect, and some here are of those that sided with Lucifer and his insurrection and rebellion. And so in this lifetime, in this embodiment, we have a chance to, renew our vows and to realign our allegiance to either the Father and the Son or Lucifer and the fallen angels. And that will determine our eternal inheritance. And really, that's what life and being is about. And most people don't realize that and forget, never even live up or aspire to find answers to all of those questions.
Okay. Now, when I was reading your book, what you were just mentioning is one thing that stood out to me as an underlying thread throughout the whole book. Is about this here fact that we are really kind of here in the long run to make a choice. Basically, the choice is, who are we going to serve?
Right. Yeah.
And this has to do with the fact that in the beginning, some were against God or some were against good, and some sat on the fence. So rather than have any fence sitters or any people undecided or in rebellion, it's better to give everybody a chance to make a decision once and for all. Is that pretty much what it boils down to?
Yeah, that's what life and embodiment and being is about. Because now those that make no choice, because it speaks about this in the Word in Revelation, Christ talks about those that are lukewarm, the Laodicean church, those that sit on the fence in this lifetime. If you make no choice and you get caught up in the carnal aspects of world and being and are just okay with the comforts of living, he's going to spew you out. He's going to count you as siding with Lucifer and the fallen ones. So we now have to make a choice. We have to live for either or and determine our allegiance and decide what's important to us, because it's only through making those decisions that we can have a return to our first estate. Otherwise, you will be counted, with the fallen ones and with those that are basically inheritance of damnation.
And I would imagine from God's perspective, He just simply wants to know, where does everybody stand? I want to know where my loyalties lie.
Right. And that's what this life is about.
And you did a good job of pointing that there out. And then one of the things that you did, because, there's been so much controversy on the internet that I've seen over the years about one camp says, yes, there is a serpent seed. Another one says, no, there isn't one. The theologians can't agree on it. Another camp says that there's a messianic bloodline, and they attribute that to Cain, which that was a long story, and you'd have to have been familiar with Lawrence Gardner's work to understand that one. But moving on with where I was really going with that, you've actually found the scripture. Now, it wasn't, spelled out in the Bible as we know it today, but you did find scripture that actually confirmed this other seed line. I think part of it was the Coburn Bible, wasn't it?
Oh, yeah, not just the Coburn Bible, but
that's why I said part.
Right. I found so many. And my fourth book set the premise for all that. Because it's my opinion that that is one of the biggest secrets that can help, once people have discernment on it, it can help people learn what all of this is really about and why we see so much chaos in the world and why there's continuous war, why we have a new world order and what the elites are supporting, why they worship Lucifer and the fallen angels. Once you understand that there are two seed lines and that what was spoken about as the parable of the garden with Adam and Eve eating of the fruit of the tree of knowledge, good and evil, how that led to the birth of Cain, and how Cain was a murderer and a liar and a deceiver, and why it says that he was of that wicked one. And it says also that that he was, those that were the killers from Abel to Zacharias, that it goes all the way back to Cain. It's that there's the enmity between the seed of the woman and the seed of the serpent. It all goes back to there being a different bloodline on this planet. And once people can wrap their minds around that and understand that, so much of the scriptures will explain itself in a way that it never has before. Specifically, like Matthew chapter 13, where the Lord speaks about an enemy having snuck into the garden and sowing the tares. That was Lucifer. That was Satan. Cain and his bloodline. That's why in chapter 4 they are excluded from Adam's genealogy, which begins in chapter 5. And so once you have the eyes to see, the mind to understand, the ears to hear, all of that makes sense, and discernment will lead one to revelation unlike it ever has before. The other thing that I wrote about, and specifically in the Sons of God, the one that we're talking about now, is about how we have pre-existence and how we're predestinated and we have pre-election for this lifetime. And I explain all of that so people can understand and not identify with just our physical aspects of our life and being, because we are so much greater than our physical bodies. Once people can align themselves with the spiritual aspect and that part of themselves, they can learn that they can have part in eternal inheritance, because there is an aspect of themselves that is connected to the Father and the Son. We're co-creators with the Creator of all things, and that aspect of ourselves can do incredible things, just miracle accomplishments, if we come to identify with the wonderful abilities and capacities that we have been blessed and granted to be able to do and to perform.
And that is true. Well, it's true for me anyway. I don't like to say true because so many people would disagree. And then you'd get into something that, well, they'd say, well, prove it right now. I'm making a potato up here in my hand. Well, you know, this is unrealistic, but this is where people go. But you and I both know what we mean when we say it.
Right.
At any rate, I was still thinking about your book. You said something just a minute ago, and this is something I've said many times in the past myself. In order to understand end-time prophecy and what's happening now, you need to know what happened in the very beginning that led you up to now. And this is where I find work like yours to be so important, is you lay everything out where people can really fully understand what's going on. And it was really while reading your book, I mean, because I've always had a thing about religion that I never really wanted to be a part of it, although I did want to serve God. But now I begin to understand, you know, better where I was coming from with that, because while I was reading your book, that it came to me like, hey, all religion is man-made. You have to go through a preacher or a pope or a priest or somebody to get to God. It's like they don't all call themselves vicarious gods, but that is the position they fill. That's what they end up doing. And I'm like, well, as long as you got a middleman in there, then you don't know. You have to take full faith in that middleman. And any books written by that middleman and anything that's taught by this middleman, unless you can go straight to the source yourself, in other words.
Yes.
So,
and that's important because, yes, people can utilize certain pastors, ministers, and preachers as intercessories to lead them to the Father and the Son, but you have to go on a personal quest. You have to go beyond that because you have to have a direct relationship with the Father and the Son to be led to true discernment and revelation. And it's them that you need to worship, not a book or a religion or a certain pastor or preacher or minister. You have to put the Father and the Son on that pedestal and only bow to them. You don't want to, bow to anybody else, even to angels. We're not to worship angels, and that's so many do that as well. So you have to be careful.
Yeah, and that leads me right back to a scripture that came to mind when I read that. Blind leaders of the blind, they shall both fall into the ditch. And when people follow a religion, they become blind followers of a blind religion that thinks they're following God, and then them and the religion both fall into the ditch.
Right. And that's the state of the world. That's why we see so much chaos today, is you have the blind leading the blind. And so that's the insanity of what we see within the world.
And there was something else that came to my mind in that book, and I had it on my tongue just a minute ago that I found very interesting. I'm trying to recover it. It was something that few people really catch or know that caught my eye that I wanted to bring out. If I remember it in a minute, I'll come back to mind with it.
Sure.
I know it had to do with Adam and Eve. In the meantime, you was wanting to mention something about Revelation earlier. Why don't we bring that up while I think about it?
Oh, yeah, certainly. You and I, we were talking a little bit earlier about how they have basically told you that you have short time, and I had mentioned Revelation 12, which speaks about the woman clothed in the sun, with the moon beneath her feet, a child within her womb, and a crown of 12 stars. It's Revelation 12:1, and a couple verses into that. But that particular sign that is spoken about in Revelation 12 is actually something that happens within the celestial skies on September 23rd, the Feast of Trumpets on 2017. And it's my opinion that that particular day is going to be very important for us as being the last generation, the fig tree generation. And it's also my opinion that we are the last generation, and that when Christ was speaking about the fig tree generation as defined by Matthew 24, Mark 13, and Luke 21, that he said, "Know ye the parable of the fig tree." And he was saying that to his followers because it was a very important thing for those that would be of the last generation. And what that was is that on November 29th, 1947, a commandment was put forth by the United Nations for the recreation of Israel. There's a particular text called the Apocalypse of Peter, which speaks about the recreation of the fig tree, the parable of the fig tree, where Peter asked Christ specifically, and he tells him that the parable of the fig tree is connected to the nation of Israel, to the people of Israel, and that that fig tree parable was fulfilled when Israel came together as a nation in our lifetime. And so we would be the last generation, that there would be one generation from that particular time, which is like 70 years. And so, the Revelation 12, in my opinion, is going to be very important for us, as the last generation, and, that something significant will happen on that particular day. Also in 2015, there will be 4 blood red moons on 4 of the very important feast days of the Jewish, the Hebraic peoples, and that would be very significant for us as well. And there's another thing that a guy named Dewey Bruton, he puts together some information on Daniel's timeline, and he's basically plotted how Daniel's timeline, it all lines up with the end date of 2017. And so his work in Revelation 12, as being a celestial phenomena, it all leads to something significant happening on 2017. Whether that's, the last day, the last trump, the true rapture of the church, or some other significant event, we won't know until we get there. But it is my opinion that 2017 will be a pivotal year for all of us as the fig tree generation.
It could be a marker of a ending era or a beginning era too, couldn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. It could mark the beginning of the last 7 years of tribulation. We don't know. We won't know until we get there, but it is my opinion that it will be very significant.
Well, I can't wait to see what happens in those times.
Right.
This part is not in your book, but I can't help but be curious. Do you think the Vatican or the Catholic Church plays a role in the end time scenario? I know I do.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, because they're, the woman riding on the scarlet beast, and the whole, because the Roman Catholic Church is a pagan church. They still worship the fallen angels. The fact that the Pope wears what is called a mitre and is connected to Dagon, or who is referenced as Dagon in the Old Testament, whom we know as Dogon, or is also called Oannes. That's worship of the fallen angels. Even the virgin worship is connected to Astarte, Ishtar, Inanna is her Sumerian name. And so the Catholic Church still, does idolatry, pagan worship, and is involved in such. And the whole thing with the obelisk, even the Vatican Church, at the very bottom, where only the Pope and the cardinals can go. They showed this in a series on History Channel, which was quite amazing to me because we're not privileged to see this, but they showed where the popes and the cardinals go down underneath. All right, brother.
For authors, filmmakers, entertainment, and all your listening needs. Listen now to Talk Now Radio, where no topic is taboo.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Talk Now Radio. This is your host, Royce the Redneck Radio Man. And joining me tonight is going to be Zen Garcia. And we're going to be discussing his latest book, The Sons of God. And before we get started discussing this, and before I introduce Zen, who's been on my show in the past, and we've always conducted a fantastic show together, just overlook it. I do try to mute it, but I'm not always successful at getting to the mute button in time, especially when I'm talking and it hits me suddenly. So just overlook that should it happen, and hopefully it won't happen. Also, if you folks are listening and all of a sudden there's no sound, it's possible that I had a power failure because it's raining over here. If that happens, me and Zen will reschedule this. Don't worry about that. If it doesn't happen, we're going to continue on with the show. Just wanted to know so nobody be surprised. Zen, you want to tell us a little something real quick about what got you interested? Your book is really not that far off topic from Lucifer, the father of Cain, in my opinion. But before we get to all of that, I wanted to let everybody know, or remind everybody that I'm no longer Paranormal Palace Radio. I have switched my name to Talk Now Radio, and I've started doing variety instead of just paranormal. I have not, gotten away from paranormal, and I have not gotten away from works of spirit or works of religion or anything else. I have simply added to it, and I'm including sports, news, entertainment. Whatever you can think of. I decided to just offer me a big, broader base of knowledge that I can learn from as I go. And also the call-in number would be 832-632-7904. If you guys are listening somewhere other than at Talk Now Radio, I invite y'all to get a free membership to my site at www.talknowradio.com, and that will let you into the chat room, and you can also sign up for a free newsletter while you're at it. And we'd love to have more people in chat to discuss these shows when we have them, in fact. Now, if you want to learn more about Zen, you can find out more about him at www.fallenangels.tv. And he's got a social network of his own over there, complete with groups, forums, blogs, photo gallery, video gallery, music gallery. He has all kinds of information about his work that he's been researching over there, places to discuss his work and learn more, and a place to contact him over there. Everything you could possibly want. I really recommend you go over there and join up. In fact, I'm a member over there, and he's even been gracious enough to allow me one of his groups over there to post my shows in, because he needs some of his members who just might want to know what I had going on. So, Zen, how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing great, brother, and it's an honor to be here with you, Royce, and just want you to know that we're all praying for you, brother.
Oh, well, thank you. I really do appreciate that. And while you're mentioning that, for the y'all that don't know about it yet, I've been diagnosed with emphysema, brachioneticus, and MAC, and my lungs are pretty much in pretty terrible condition. So if I do cough during a show,